launch conductor in mission control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire. Missile away.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Celestis broadcast that we have approximately every month. My name is Marc. I'm one of the ambassadors for Celestis Memorial Space Flight. I have to apologize in advance real quick. I am boosted. I had my flu shot, but obviously there's something that had tried and is still trying to invade my body in the form of just an aggravating cough. With a little bit of blockage in the throat with phlegm and all that kind of nasty stuff. But I am no way sick. I'm fine. I still do my 175 push-ups every morning. Liar. And, so this should not in any way affect this broadcast. One thing that we are missing is our fabulous CEO, Charles Schaefer. And he is touring around right now, and I do believe New Mexico area. And okay, I'm sorry, I was reading a message here. I shouldn't have, but anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and bring up people that we see and that we know. And if you have any questions, if you are in our chat room, please put it in. It's a matter of record, even if we may not be able to answer it right away, because since Charles is a professional and I don't see members of our team around as well, they know exactly what to say. Oh, never mind. Our question answerer is in the office. So members from Celestis, including myself, are here to answer anything that you may, that we can answer for you, actually. But let me go ahead and bring up our Chief Marketing Officer here. This is Lindsay, guys. And if you never met Lindsay personally, you've never seen her before, you can tell how beautiful she is. But other than that, she's very, 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 very intelligent and smart with everything. She's our newest member of Celestis, by the way. And Lindsay, why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself right now?
Hi. Well, actually, I'm now no longer the newest member at Celestis, but I've joined the team in April, and I'm really excited to be here. We do something that's so cool and something that's not like nothing else on Earth. It really truly is out of this world. Pardon the pun. It's just one of those perfect sayings. But I am from Houston and grew up in Space City. I'm a direct product of NASA, and I love space as well as, I love celebrating important people. I have lost my father, and it's been 5 years now. But this topic that we're going to be discussing today, it really hits home for me, and I'm sure it touches a lot of people's hearts. The holidays can be rough, even if you have a fantastic year. And if you're dealing with the loss of someone important to you, or, whether it be close in time, or if it's, in my opinion, you lose that person every morning when you wake up and realize they're gone. So adapting to the new normal without them, especially around times when you're supposed to be boisterous and happy and jolly, sometimes can be hard. And learning how to balance that and honor yourself and your grieving process is something that we all have to take time to learn how we do it, because everyone does it differently, and you don't know how you're going to, even if you try to think about how you normally feel about stuff, until you are faced with that moment. So I'm really excited about our guest today. And Charlie will be on soon to give us the full launch updates with all of our missions that are upcoming, because we have a lot of stuff going on come 2022. And I don't want to to forget any of the details. So I'm going to defer to him and his expertise on making sure that you have every single bit of detail that you need. But I'll be around to help answer questions, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with everyone. Marc, you're muted. Marc, you're muted. Sorry.
No, I do this so that I don't cough across anyone else speaking, but I just forget. It's like, okay, I guess I got to say stuff now. I'm really excited. Charlie is in the lobby waiting for us right now. We're going to bring him up real quick. What I wanted to say basically towards Lindsay, we're happy that you are with Celestis. You've been doing some wonderful work so far. There are already some questions that are popping in our chat room, and we'll get to those when we can, and as Charlie would like to answer. And our special guest today, we're gonna tell you after Charlie gives you the update, and I want to hear his story about where he's been, what he's doing, and why he's late. Okay, we're gonna do that. He's never late. Not like our flights. Our flights are always on time, right? So things are in concert here. But our guest today is going to be incredibly incredible. So let's go ahead and grill Charlie. Hey, boss.
Hey, Marc. How are you?
Oh, I don't know. How are you?
I'm doing good. Sorry, we had some technical issues here.
Not a problem. We suspected. I just heard today that you were going to be joining us from another location, so I wondered about what the capabilities were about handling our broadcast, and it seems that you figured that out. So good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so Lindsay, we're gonna, I guess, drop you and talk to you later. But thank you so much, Lindsay, about being a wonderful, just a wonderful person.
Well, thank you, Marc. You guys have a great show. I'll be watching.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, boss, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay, another reminder, folks, before Charlie gives us an update of our upcoming launches. Like I said before, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, go ahead and pop it into the chat room, and we will grab them as needed, and we'll carry on with the show. Charlie, I guess this is going to be our last broadcast before it's our last broadcast of the year until
Correct.
We move into 22, where we will continue our broadcast. But before the holidays, this is the last one. We have them once a month anyway, and I think we had 2 this month. Am I right on that? I'm losing track of time. Or did we have one in November?
2 holidays?
Yeah, no, we had 2 broadcasts.
No, just this one.
Okay, it's our first one this month. Okay, without any further ado, guys, if you don't know who Charles Chaper is, he is our CEO, our guru, our specialist, our scientist with Celestis Memorial Spaceflight, and he will tell you as much as you want to know. And I hope you enjoy this broadcast because we have a lot to tell you. Boss, what's going on? What's new in the world these days?
Well, not much. We're coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico, beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico, and enjoying the relative small city from compared to Houston, Texas. So happy to be here. Looking forward to introducing everyone to Joelle and answering their questions and letting Joelle talk about her area of expertise. As always, I usually start with just a mission update, and I'm happy to do that again this evening. Next year, we have 3 missions scheduled for launch, and begins on April 13 with our Aurora flight, which will actually be from New Mexico, from Spaceport America in New Mexico. That's our Earthrise service. And we'll be announcing details very soon about our headquarters hotel, about the 3 days of launch activities that we have associated with the mission. I believe it will be our 8th or 9th Earthrise service. And we always look forward to working with Jerry Larson and his team at Up Aerospace on flights here out of New Mexico. Then in middle of next year. Currently looking at June without a specific targeted date yet. We have our second Luna service, and we'll be flying from Cape Canaveral on a United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket on board the Astrobotic Peregrine mission, and headed toward the lunar surface with that mission. We're very excited about what will be, as I said before, our second flight to the lunar surface. And that should be pretty amazing for us. And shortly after the first of the year, we'll provide a little bit more update on that. Also, next year, about the same time, we will be flying our first ever Voyager service, currently scheduled also for June of next year. And that mission will be a pretty amazing flight. As I said, our Voyager service is our deep space service. And we're excited about that. To remind everybody, that's called the Enterprise flight. And on board it will be approximately 100 to as many as 150. That mission is still available for booking. The Tranquility flight, which is our second Luna mission, is closed, and all of the capsules are at Astrobotics facility in Pittsburgh. But the Enterprise flight is still open, still available should you desire to sign up for yourself with a DNA service, or for our more traditional memorial spaceflight service. We can still accommodate you on that mission. On board that mission, named Enterprise, of course, will be Gene and Majel Roddenberry, the first family of Star Trek, if you will, along with James Doohan, Scotty from the Star Trek series. That mission is special for just any number of reasons, but probably to me, the most important one is it allows me to fulfill a long-kept promise that I personally made to Majel Barrett Roddenberry, who played Nurse Chapel on the series. When we first agreed to fly her husband, Gene Roddenberry, on our founder's flight. So we'll be flying. She asked if we would agree to fly the two of them together when the time came. The time is now, and we're looking forward to that flight. So that's our third mission next year. Let me just say, for those of you waiting for our next Earth orbital mission, that's scheduled for the first quarter of 2023. We are contracted with Spaceflight Industries to fly aboard a Falcon 9 rocket out of Cape Canaveral as I say, in the first quarter of 2023, our next Earth orbital flight. Looking just a little bit down the road after that, we'll be doing additional Earthrise mission and our third Luna mission, which we call the Destiny flight. So we have a full manifest. It's full for us. It's not full for you. There's still room for all of those missions. Those are very compelling flights. They're all conducted with a 3-day launch event, including launch pad tours and memorial services, and of course, as close as you're allowed to get to see the liftoff. So we're looking forward to a busy next year and thereafter, and are thankful that the commercial industry has moved forward as rapidly as it has, so that we're now able to schedule multiple flights in each year. So I think that's a good update, Mark. Back to you. You're on mute.
I do that because I was coughing.
Hope you're feeling all right.
It's just a little thing in my throat here. I just can't seem to get rid of, but it will. Anyway, so The reason this broadcast is around is basically, like I said before, every month we do an update for our families and everyone who wants to know what the schedule is for our launches. This is what we primarily do with this broadcast. And occasionally we will have a guest, and a guest basically to speak about things that are in conjunction with what it is we do, annually, to be honest with you, because we've been launching for a very long time. The attendees who watch this broadcast are mainly interested in updating any new news that Charles has basically provided to us. And this is our primary mission for this broadcast, is to, supply as much information as we possibly can to our attendees. And then if we have a guest host, or a guest here, which we do, we will go ahead and follow through with that. I assume, Charles, at this moment that you'd like to answer some of the questions that have popped up concerning our launches. Am
Sure.
I right on that? Okay.
Sure. I'm happy to do that now.
Yeah, I have a question here that goes to the guest that somebody asked. Okay, but I want to know your answer on this as well once we put it to our guests. And the question is basically, I'll put it up on the screen, is it okay to have a memorial event for someone that passed a long time ago? And I guess just to add on to that, people were not launched immediately after their cremation, obviously for scheduling purposes. So a long time could be based on what NASA, when NASA tell us we can launch, when SpaceX tell us to launch. Charles, am I right on that, or did I leave something out?
No, it's a good point. What I often say is that we're fortunate in many ways in that people come to us more for a life celebration and that than anything else. Certainly it's a memorial service. It's often not the only memorial service that people have for a past loved one. But in our case, there's been time to go through some of the early stages of grief, to recognize that really what we want to do to honor our mom, our dad, whoever that we're honoring has evolved to the point where we're ready to celebrate that person's life and to give that person, if you will, the biggest send-off, honor off the planet. And there's really not a time limit to do that. In our history, I think I've said on previous Facebook Live events that the very first customer we had celebrated her father 10 years after he had passed away, because we weren't around when her husband passed away, or her father passed away. And she, upon finding out about us, said that's exactly what he would have wanted. And so there's not really a time limit or a time requirement for remembering someone that was near, dear, and important to you in this most unique, special, and compelling way.
Okay, great. Anyone else, if you have questions, please go ahead and present them to us in our chat room. There is a lot. We're about almost halfway into this broadcast. Typically at this time, we bring our guests in, or we're 10 minutes early when we do. Is there anything else you want to follow up on, Charles? Or
no, I think a lot of people are interested in hearing from Joelle. I'm looking forward to seeing her again. So let's bring her on.
All righty. Before we do, let me read a little bit of a bio of what I found on Joelle. Joelle S. Anthony. She's a licensed funeral director, insurance agent, and sacred grief practitioner. She specializes in helping guide individual families, businesses, and government agencies navigate uncomfortable and difficult conversations about death, dying, end of life, funeral, and burial burial planning. She's originally from Beaumont, South Carolina. So without any further ado, let's give a nice big round of applause for Miss Joelle Anthony. Hi, Joelle. Oops, you muted yourself. Unmute yourself. Try again. Nope, you're still muted. I tried to unmute you, but it looks like I can't. You have to unmute yourself. I know. Hey, do me a favor, then pop off and pop back in, and maybe that'll work. I'll see you in a couple seconds. Folks, technical difficulties happening. Since this, I hate to
Can
brand
you hear
it.
me now?
Oh, there you
Yes.
go. You
Perfect.
found the button.
Hooray.
Yes, I had to jump on my cell phone because my laptop was not letting me in. But thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And hi, Mr. Schaefer. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, Joelle. And thank you for joining us on what is really a very appropriate occasion for someone with your expertise and background. I'll say that we first met at one of our launches. I think Joelle had found out a little bit about us, and like a lot of people said, well, I'm just going to go see one of those things and learn what these guys do, who they are, and what they're about. And we had a very enjoyable and successful launch, and got to spend some time talking with Joelle, got to know her. And when we came to the holiday season and we were looking for maybe just a little bit different topic than we've had in the past, this just seems like such an appropriate time to talk about the holidays, grief, about how people deal with that and how they can turn what is a loss into as positive an experience as can be had, both for themselves and their families, and just in general, trying to get through the loss of a loved one, which is, in my experience now for 30 years of doing this, that's not an easy thing to do. So we're looking forward to having that conversation tonight.
I am looking forward to it as well. And I have to say that the Celestis memorials are, in my opinion, one of the most unique experiences that I've ever had as a death care professional. I have never been to a memorial service of any kind where everyone is excited about being there and celebrating at the end, genuinely celebrating, and so moved by the emotion that this service provides. So, like I told you when we met in 2018, thank you for creating this, because I think what you're doing is so important for families.
It's
Well,
interesting. I'm sorry, Charles. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Marc.
It's interesting. I do remember you. You were in New Mexico with us, if I remember correctly, and you weren't there to send off a loved one. You were just basically there out of curiosity, which really intrigued me because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's nice. I mean, I hate to use the word spectator, but you were in fact there to pretty much take in all of the love that I had experienced when I went to my first New Mexico launch. And it's interesting to know what your insight was. How did you feel? What did you see? What did you think when you were there?
From the moment I arrived, well, let's not even start when I arrived. Let's start when I contacted Celestis. Working with the team to find out about the launch, even as someone who was simply observing, was one of the most proficient processes that I've gone through as a death care professional. And by that, I mean that the entire team, from beginning to end, to making the reservation to attend the launch, to getting the information about the hotel where we were going to be staying, even though there was a change in the date that the launch was going to be taking place, and I had to do things like change flights and make accommodations a little bit differently than I had originally thought. The entire process was seamless from beginning to end, which made a very strong impression on me about the level of professionalism that your team displays when working with families. I was there as an observer, but I was also there as a professional, trying to see whether this is something I wanted to offer to my community that I work with. When I arrived, I was so impressed at how you all had welcome packages and name tags and activities planned for us that were centered around the entire launch experience, from looking at telescopes and seeing different planets and the moons of different planets, things that I had never done by myself. And then to have a team of professionals who knew exactly what they were looking at, what they were talking about. It was a mind blowing experience going out to the launch site and actually being able to take a tour of the white sands area where the launch would be taking place. And then the entire memorial service that you guys put together, and hearing the stories and how much this experience meant to the families that were celebrating the lives of their loved ones was extremely touching. I was honestly moved to tears during the memorial service. But then the excitement the night before the launch, and not really being able to sleep, but knowing that I had to go to sleep because we had to get up super early in the morning and go out into the middle of the desert to participate in the launch. And when we got there, there were food trucks, there was music playing. It was like a celebration. A festival was is one of the best words that I could use to describe it. It wasn't somber, it wasn't sad. Of course, people were emotional thinking about their loved ones, but when I was interviewing families that had members on board, everyone was so excited and was communicating that this is what my loved one wanted. This was their final wish. And I'm so glad that I'm able to give this to them. As unorthodox as a memorial practice as this may seem to be, it means a lot to me and my family. And that countdown, when everyone was counting down from 10 to 1, and hearing the shuttle or the rocket break the sound barrier, oh my gosh, it was moving. That's the only word I can use to describe it. Overwhelmingly moving. And then looking around and seeing everyone crying and embracing and clapping and cheering and so excited that the launch was successful. It was almost like a sigh of relief, like, oh, we finally got this done. And I've never seen anything like that before at a memorial service.
Well, we we often say, I often say that you'll never attend a memorial service quite like ours, where there's as much cheering and high fiving and um, pure joy. And that's such a juxtaposition with what we often think about and what you experience every day in your profession, of the loss and the grief and the sadness that somehow can turn into fulfillment, joy, and just a moment for the family to maybe breathe a little easier for a while, knowing that they've done something special. Because although we've now done 17 missions, it's still a pretty unique service, and it's something that we can talk about, and certainly I do that, but you have to really experience it. And that's why it was so wonderful that you were there, and that now we can talk about it from a perspective of, yeah, I've seen it, I understand it. I wanted to begin the focus on tonight's topic, which is the holidays and grief, and how you recommend, or what your thoughts are on how to help people get through, if that's the right term. Uh, because we think of holidays as happy and pleasant, but it can have another side if it's your first Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever without that special person. So I know you have some tools and insights that we're looking forward to you sharing with our audience. And I know they're here to hear that. So tell us a little bit about what's special about a holiday period and a loss.
Well, the first thing that I want to say is that, as we know, the holidays are a time of joy and celebration for most of us. But when we're experiencing a loss, the holidays take on a completely different meaning. I can only speak for myself personally about what I've felt, but my Uncle Mark was someone that I always looked forward to sharing the holidays with, because we get together and we laugh and we joke and we stay up late eating things that we just didn't get to do together any other time other than the holidays. And that first Thanksgiving and Christmas without him was almost like I didn't want to be bothered with the holidays. I didn't care about the joyfulness that's supposed to be a part of the holiday season. I didn't care about gifts. I didn't care about anything, because there was such a void in my heart because he wasn't there anymore. And then the pain of seeing my family miss him, that empty chair at the table, as so many of us can relate to. And that void of his laughter, things just didn't seem as funny or seem to ring as true as they once did before. So the first thing that I want to say is that it's okay. It's completely okay to be not okay or not be in the holiday spirit. I think there's a lot of pressure that's put on people that are grieving to get into the holiday spirit. But if you're not in the holiday spirit, that is 100% okay, because you're grieving.
Well,
Okay.
absolutely. Go ahead, Mark.
If I could add, everything you said is totally directed to me. I buried my mother in March, so this is my first holiday without her. Thanksgiving, of course, being the first, and then of course, basically Christmas. And to basically answer what you said in terms of it's okay to not be okay, that's exactly where I am. I'm not okay. I'm disappearing to the beach, which is my Zen spot for the Christmas holidays. My brother and sister, they both have their own families. So yeah, the grief is going to weigh heavy on me exactly at that time, because I knew where I was basically 365 days before. Yeah, I need some help, and I guess Lindsay has a great question in reflection to that on the post here, Charles, if you don't mind. But part of the question says, are there any exercises that can be done or some kind of checklist to follow which will allow you to feel your feelings, but also help to keep you grounded and moving forward in the process?
That is an amazing question. And I want to say, I want to be very careful about how I answer this. No, there's not a checklist, to be honest with you. There's not a formula for overcoming the feelings of grief. However, there are things that you can do, and those things are going to be very personal to you. For me, looking at photographs of my uncle, like I just showed the picture here, and telling people about him and how funny he was and how he introduced me to death care and how his laugh could just fill up a room, and I've never heard a laugh and probably will never hear a laugh like his ever again in life. It brings me joy because it's keeping his memory alive and keeping his spirit alive in my heart. However, talking about a loved one, if the death is very recent or the loss is very recent, may not be what works for someone else. So I think the key to grounding yourself, especially during the holiday season, is discovering what makes you feel good and most connected to your loved one. Is there a ritual that you do, like burning a candle and having a prayer, or sitting in silence, or going through old family photos and reminiscing on the times that you had with your loved one, or having conversations with family members and sharing stories? Whatever it is that feels good to you is what I encourage everyone to move toward.
So, really, what I'm hearing is you can choose to be alone. You can choose to reach out to others. You can choose to go to special places. You can choose to stay at home. What's most important is for you to know yourself well enough, or discover yourself enough to where you do the things that are taking care of you,
Yes.
that are helping you feel what what you're looking to feel, actually, because I think grief is such a personal situation or emotion that there's not a, as you said, there's not a well, go do this kind of recommendation, but rather it's got to be something that's affirming of who you are and your connection to the one that you've lost. Is that another way to say the same thing you were saying?
100% accurate. And I love that you reiterated those points in a way that resonated with you, because as we know, sometimes I can say one thing and someone gets it, and you say the same thing a different way and someone else gets it a different way. So 100% correct.
And what do we have to be on guard against? There's some good things that you can do, and I know we are discussing those, and the affirming things that you can do, but we're human beings, and so
Yes.
sometimes we might be descending into depression, or we might be looking to abuse alcohol, or we might be just angry. Certainly, I'm like Mark, that in the last couple of years I've lost both of my parents and found myself all of the above. Well, not abusing alcohol, thank goodness, but all of the above of just a range of emotions, and not all of them were positive, productive, and Pollyanny-ish, if I may say that. And I think, again, I'm imagining you're about to say, well, that's okay. Just pick some techniques that because we all go through emotional up and downs, and most of the time we find ways out of it. And that's an important element, as well as sort of how to come out from the bottom.
I'm going to be extremely vulnerable with you guys, if that's okay. I
Sure.
love that you hit on that question specifically, because one of the things that I turned to during my grief was alcohol. And I've never been a big drinker, but because my uncle was a drinker and I wanted to feel connected to him, I found myself drinking more than I ever had before in my life. And the thing that helped me the most, honestly, was seeking grief counseling and working through my grief with a professional. Unfortunately, specifically in the death care industry, we see an uptick in suicide rates around this time of year because people get into that depression. They feel that isolation and that loneliness. So if you are struggling with thoughts about ending your life, I would definitely suggest that you reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And if someone could put that number up on the screen, that would be extremely appreciated, because the emotions that we're feeling, especially during this time of year when we're seeing our loved ones or our friends and family with their family members, we start to feel like, well, why don't I have my family member here? Or how I don't know how to navigate this space without this person. And sometimes seeking professional help is not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing, especially during this time of year. Other activities that you want to refrain from are things that just don't make you feel good, and things that are going to be counterproductive to your overall health and well being. I've talked to individuals who found themselves speeding on the highway as a way to get out feelings of rage and emotion. So anything that jeopardizes your safety, anything that jeopardizes the safety of others, anything that just makes you feel significantly worse than you did just experiencing the grief, are things that you want to refrain from. Abuse of drugs and alcohol and reckless behaviors. If you're a person that finds comfort in others, even if you're not feeling 100% connected to those around you, perhaps getting yourself out of being isolated, even if it's for a short period of time, may be helpful. Spending time in nature is something that I always encourage others to do, because nature has a way of grounding us. Um, some people find comfort in spiritual practices. So anything that just opens you up to looking at things and changing your perspective from negative to positive. And I say those words very carefully because grief is not a negative thing. It's not negative energy. It's not a bad thing, but anything that gets you out of those feelings of isolation and out of that environment where all you can do is sit down and think about your loss and your depression. Even though we know grief is something that's constant, anything that pulls you out, even if it's for a brief second, is extremely helpful.
We have noticed in our world of providing memorial spaceflight services that one of the phenomena that fills me up, or that I hear about and really brings a smile to my face, is our family members tell us that they've had the opportunity to let their loved one know what the plans were for them before they had passed away. And almost universally, it brings a smile to the person who's going through that passing's face. And people come up to me and said, Charlie, the memory of that smile on my father when I told him what we were going to do for him is something that has sustained me all the way to this launch. And so if you can take that writ large, if you will, if you can think about things that made your loved one happy and somehow perhaps even participate in them, even if it's not necessarily what you would do, but just know that this is something mom really loved to do. And by me doing it, I can make that connection and I can feel that perhaps that she's there with me. And that really helped me. And I've heard that at almost every launch that we've conducted, that people tell us about, just not only the anticipation from the dying loved one, but what that brought to the family members as they were dealing with it. It's not the correct phrase, but it was really something that they looked forward to at a time when they really weren't looking forward to all that much. There really wasn't much on the table, if you will, that made them smile, but knowing that somehow they'd found this service and they've connected with and told their loved one that, hey, you're going to be riding a rocket. That was a very positive, again, good choice of words, but it was a positive element to their lives, from the point at which someone has passed to the point at which they were out there at the launch site, which sometimes can be a while. And so holding on to that feeling, knowing that they were really doing something special, was helping them. And I always say, funerals and memorial services are for the living. And that's a perfect example of where we can help. And it makes all of our staff members feel great, the fact that we're able to offer what we offer. I had a more specific question, which is, how does one find a grief counselor?
Sure, there's several ways to go about finding a grief counselor. One of the most easy ways, as we all know, we live in the digital age, you can Google anything. So simply by Googling grief counselors in my area, a plethora of resources will be made available to you. With COVID being a part of our reality now, many of the grief counseling services that are offered virtually. So a lot of times you don't even have to leave the comfort of your home or safe space. A lot of times people have hesitance about going into a counselor's office for whatever reason. Another way is to contact your insurance or healthcare provider and ask for information. You're able to do this anonymously. You don't have to give your name or any other qualifying information about yourself unless you're making an appointment. And then, of course, at that point, you'll have to provide your name, member ID number, and things like that. Um, Contacting 800 numbers like the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is a way to get access to resources if you feel that you are in immediate need of care. I'm not going to say calling 911, but reaching out to your local dispatch office and asking for resources is also another way. Do you guys have any suggestions about how to reach out to grief counselors? I've pretty much listed everything that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think you did a good job. I think the most important thing is to try to find it within yourself. When you're not motivated to do much, you should be motivated to help yourself, I think. And we're all a little guilty of not paying enough attention to ourselves, particularly loving people are not used to reflecting that inward and loving ourselves. And I think again, that's something that it's okay to do that. It's so many of the grieving have to live their lives, have to go forward, have to go to work, have to raise the child, have to get through the period. And that kind of prompts kind of the reverse question from the topic tonight. So we're talking about, because holidays are especially tough times, how to handle grief during the holidays. But I think it's important, and I'm looking to you, Joelle, for affirmation or modification. It's important to understand that once you get through the holidays, it might not be over. You might still need to.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Grief, just like death, does not have business hours. Grief is not on the Gregorian calendar. It doesn't follow the days of the week. It doesn't even follow what we turn to a lot of times, which are the 7 stages or 5 stages of grief. A lot of people have the misconception that if you're not following the steps as they're presented when we research them online, then you're doing it wrong or something's wrong with you. You don't have to experience the stages of grief as they're ordered as shock, denial, anger, bargaining, and then acceptance. Again, speaking personally for myself, I'm not a mental health professional, but some days I feel completely okay, even 7 years later after my uncle's passed away. And then other days it's hard for me to get out of the bed because I'm so overwhelmed by the absence of his presence. Um, and then some days I'm completely angry that he chose what he chose instead of choosing to be here with us, his family. And again, grief counseling helped me to work through a lot of those feelings, but it's important to understand that grief does not keep business hours or holiday schedules, or nor is it convenient to our lives. I remember when I was in mortuary school, one of my professors, the psychology professor, said to us that grief is one of the most intense or the most intense emotion that we'll ever feel in our lives. And thank God for most of us, it is the emotion that we will have to experience the least. But with COVID, that's not necessarily the reality anymore. There's a misconception that you're only supposed to grieve deeply when when a family member dies. But there are relationships that we keep outside of our immediate family, with coworkers, with neighbors, with friends. And so many people have passed away in the last year and a half that we don't even know where we start to grieve or what we start to grieve first. And we're all grieving our reality prior to 2020, compiled with losing loved ones, compiled with our jobs in many cases being lost or being overwhelmed at our jobs because of people passing away. So you can see something on the television. I was listening to Marc background prior to coming on with you all, and they were talking about the tornadoes that ripped through our country a few days ago, and my heart broke for those families. That's a level of grief. So to answer your question, after the holidays are over, life continues. That means that grief continues as well.
There's a couple of questions.
There's a lot. I have a ton that we're not going to be able to get through, but I'll go ahead and
well, before we do that, Marc, I wanted to focus in on something that we've kind of talked around about, but I wanted to take it on directly. Sorry for the interruption, but my mind is feeble, and if I don't do it, I'll forget it.
Me too.
suicide. We have clients who the family is honoring someone who's chosen to take their own life. And in talking with those folks, it's especially hard for them to get past anger and to let grief and therefore healing come in. And any special thoughts or even not special thoughts about how to balance that emotion of anger? And I think people get angry even when it's not a suicide, even when, well, my sister passed away and it just wasn't her time or something like that. I guess I feel like maybe that's normal, but that also creates if you will, a second tier that you have to get through in addition to just loss.
I want to be very clear on my intention before I respond to what you said. I am not encouraging anyone to take their life. I'm simply sharing a perspective that was shared with me last night. I taught a class entitled the Chakra Grief Workshop, which is a workshop that I host that takes a more spiritual lens and applies it to our grief journey. And I had a mother in the class whose non-binary 18-year-old child took their life 3 months ago. And what she shared with the class was that she struggled with so much anger and so much hatred towards her child because they had made that decision. And she was conflicted by these feelings. And the thing that brought her peace, or the perspective that brought her peace and helped her move through that emotion, or gain a better understanding of that emotion, I don't want to say work through, was that her child, the person that she had loved and created, made the decision that they needed to make to find peace in the realm that they existed because they could not find peace in themselves. And when she said that, it moved me to tears, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it now because it's such a complex layer that's added to grief when you don't understand why a person would decide to make that decision. But understanding that her loved one made the choice that they needed to make to have peace, even if it was only for a moment, bought her peace. And when you said that, her words immediately came back up. And again, I'm not encouraging anyone to seek peace in that way. I just wanted to share that perspective that she shared with the class in case and in the hopes that it brings peace to someone who's struggling with that type of grief.
Wow. Phew. Okay. Wow. In terms of struggling, I've been struggling over my mother's passing up until this day, and we buried her in March, and it comes unexpectedly on me, and it could take the smallest thing. I could find something that was given to me by her, or remember an experience, just while I'm taking a shower, and I just break down like a big huge crybaby, and it's I'm tired. I know that grief doesn't come when, or rather, the recovery of grief doesn't come when you want it to come. But I'm, asking myself, or anybody or anything that's out there, is when is this going to end? For our participants in our launches, sometimes when the launches are postponed, I'm thinking, is this adding more agony to the family, or is it actually giving them a longer time to recover so that they can in fact celebrate, something that their loved ones wanted in the first place? And I don't know if you have any words to that, but we got a ton of questions. I know we're not going to get through all of them.
Can I just interject for a second
Please
and
do.
respond to a few things I heard you say? Because
Please.
I feel like what you said encompasses what so many of us feel. We're tired. When is this going to be over? When am I going to feel like myself again? When am I going to get it together? And what I want to say is that there is no recovery from grief, unfortunately. And grief is something that we get through. It's not something we get over. And I know that's a lot to hear and that's a lot to take in, especially when you're overwhelmed and you're in the throes of it. And there is no answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about if I have a friend that's grieving and you don't know what to say, how to say it, or should you in fact say anything? Do you approach them and basically, hey, how you doing? When we know the obvious answer. I mean, is that something that we should be doing? How do we approach our friends and other family members on their loss?
I think sometimes those of us who aren't in the throes of grief forget what it's like. And we forget that what a person needs when they're feeling so vulnerable and so isolated is comfort. And the degree of that comfort that they want to receive is up to them. But by simply asking, is there anything that I can say or anything that I can do? How can I be here to support you in this moment? Simply asking. A lot of times people are intimidated and just don't know what to say. Like the question said, just simply asking, what can I do to support you in this moment? And that
Right.
depends. The answer that you're going to get is going to be dependent upon the relationship that you have with that person and where they are in their journey. But do what they tell you that they need. Don't assume that what you need or what you would do or what you would want in that situation is what the other person would want. Simply ask.
Okay. Charlie, you have anything else to add, or how should we continue?
Well, I see a couple of questions I just wanted to real quickly share. One was people feeling awkward when they ask a friend about how they're doing because they're concerned that they might remind them of their loss. I guess my non-professional answer is don't shy away from your friend or your loved one and expressing your care and concern for them out of fear that you'll bring up. I think probably they pretty much know they've lost someone and they're not going to be offended if they probably be more offended if you don't ask them how they're doing.
Sure.
But that's something I probably people struggle with. Joel, do you have any suggestions there?
I cannot agree more with what you said. It's almost like the waiter being asked, how can I serve you? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I
He's
hear you.
working and moving around, trying to take care of everybody else. And that's what we tend to do when we're grieving. We get busy. We try to make sure everybody else has what they need, going back to that self-care that you mentioned before. But when someone finally says, how are you? It's like, oh, I'm really struggling. I'm having the worst day. And even if they need to just unload on you, don't try to respond. Don't try to fix it. Just listen. Sometimes we just need to feel heard and recognized in our journey with grief.
For sure. And I guess one final one that I saw among the various questions, which was I thought, well, that's something I'd never thought of, which is how do you deal with the little ones, as the question said, the children who see what you're going through, that you've lost someone and you're going through grief. What do you do for those folks who may not yet really understand everything?
I would say be as open and vulnerable with the children as possible because the way that they see you responding to the absence of the loved one or to the grief that you're experiencing, children don't have a word for grief. They just know something's changed. It's how they're going to be taught to deal with losses of their own. So cry in front of your children. Talk about your loved one and what it means that they're not there with the family or the unit or the neighborhood or the classroom or whatever their world encompasses with that person. Talk about that loss with them. I'm fortunate to come from a culture where children are involved in the transition, death, and after death process. And I really feel like if people had more honest conversations, and this is a personal opinion, with children about grief, loss, and death of all kinds, not just the loss of a loved one. Many of many of the issues we experience around death and grief, they won't have to.
Yeah. Well said. That makes a lot of sense. Um, well, we've kind of come to the end of our allocated hour. It's been a really, from my perspective, an excellent conversation. We're so happy that you agreed to join us this evening for really what is a very special presentation of our Facebook Live events. And well, just thank you. We're really very, very helpful. And with that, Marc, I'll hand it back over to you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I honestly am so happy Joel came on to join us. This could have easily been an hour plus broadcast with just her alone. Joel, if there's anybody that needs to speak to you personally via some sort of messaging system or on a telephone, how do people reach you?
Sure. You can visit my website, thegravewoman.com. And when you go on there, there's a little box that pops up where you put your information in. Go to the contact page and send me a message directly that way. Or you can reach out to me directly at thegravewoman@gmail.com. I'm also the Grave Woman everywhere. YouTube, I have hundreds of videos about grief, death, dying, and a lot of people find comfort in asking questions about what happened to their loved one after they pass away. And I talk about those things on the YouTube channel. And I'm also very active on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, I'm out there. So the Grave Woman, if you put me in Google, everything will pop up.
Great.
Like this.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
This is kind of you, right?
Yeah, that's my website that you have up there.
Okay.
And it has links to everything that I just told you about.
Yes, I saw here a grief kit.
Yes. As I talked about before, I believe in approaching grief and loss from a more spiritual perspective, which kind of goes against the way that we do things here in our culture in the United States. And the grief kit is something that I put together, a few of my favorite tools to help build rituals around our grief and our journeys with grief. And there's a book, there's the actual kit, and I do one-on-one workshops with individuals and with families or groups of coworkers around the topics of death, dying, and grief.
Oh, this is excellent. This is fantastic. I like that. And I noticed in here you had something about herbal teas, which I'm a big tea freak, so that will definitely kind of pull me into what it is you're peddling here. But that's absolutely fantastic. I love it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This has been absolutely wonderful. I wish we could talk more.
Do we.
You're invited to every one of our launches that you can get to, Joel, and you're always a wonderful presence to have there. And I know that you serve as a resource, if you will, on site when you have attended our launches, and we appreciate you. Speaking of launches, I wanted to say before we jump off that everyone have a wonderful holiday season, regardless of how you celebrate them. And when we come back in January, we will be less than 90 days away from our 18th Memorial Space Flight, the Aurora flight, and we'll be ready to give those of you who are planning to attend information about attending so that we can get everybody ready to come and celebrate a life with a Memorial Space Flight.
Yes, and remember, you don't have to wait a month to ask us a question. You don't have to wait a month to get more info. Please contact us here at Celestis. Go ahead and ask any question or pick up the phone and give us a call if you want to hear a friendly voice on the other end. And let's handle all of your bullet points for those of you that are attending our first launch in April. Just handle everything right now as best as we can. Don't leave any question unanswered, please. Just ask absolutely everything and anything. I'm glad we're happy to have these additional updates each and every month with the addition of a special guest based on things that we obviously are involved in. So this has been fantastic, Joel. You have been fantastic. This is good grief. Yes, thank you, Joel. I appreciate that, and maybe we'll see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been yet another one of our updates for Celestis Memorial Space Flights, where we basically tell you what's going on with your family members' flights, and we try our best to give you as much information as we possibly can. So I want to echo, especially what y'all said. Have a great holiday. Have a fantastic, be around friends, be around nature, be around loved ones, especially at this time of year. And just remember those that have gone on to bigger and better. And I wish you guys a wonderful end of 2021, only to go on bigger and greater for 2022. So, there you go. Thank you, Miss Beverly. Appreciate it. And once again, thank you, Joel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. You can view these shows, these broadcasts that we do. Go to our YouTube channel, and you can go ahead and share this with everybody and anybody, so these don't disappear after we log off. So I implore that you find our broadcast and watch them again, especially if there are updates that you missed. You can go back and get a reminder. So thank you once again, everyone. Good night. Love you all. And thanks, boss. Good seeing you, brother. Have extra added fun in there in Santa Fe. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This is the launch conductor in Mission Control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire.